Hello, I'm Will and this is Mike with the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And in this video we'll be looking at issue 17 of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormbringer magazine, which came with two new paints, Abaddon Black and Agrax Earthshade. In the magazine we'll be seeing how to apply those to our models, and then in our game we'll be learning about battle traits. So having a look through the issue first, we start off with the organisation of the Kruleboyz. In war they use a sort of formation, if you can call it that, called the Claw, which is based on the five-fingered hand of a greenskin, where each digit represents a part of it. So the boss is the thumb, the most manipulative and strongest of the fingers, and then the other four fingers represent various things depending on their roles, because even the most dim-witted of greenskins can at least understand this kind of idea. And the boss is of course always the biggest and strongest of the greenskins. And then the Kruleboyz war clans, which are more like social divisions. So a killer boss will always be an overall commander, and that will usually be the biggest and most cunning of them. And there are various sub-tribes that are made up of the different kinds of obsessions of the particular greenskins, and some auxiliaries as well, like grots and hobgrots. And there are three of the sort of more notable war clans here, like the Grinning Blades, who are masters of being sneaky, the Big Yellers, who are particularly arrogant and know their own reputation for having excellent missile weapons, and the Skullbugs, who have a sort of obsession with insects and are often surrounded by swarms of flies. Then we learn about the Age of Chaos, the next part of the history of the mortal realms. So after the Age of Myth, where Sigmar's Grand Alliance ruled and civilization flourished, the Chaos Gods slowly corrupted the hearts of the mortals and created divisions, even among the gods, to the point where civilization basically collapsed and the forces of chaos poured in. After that happened, the Age of Chaos, the realms were corrupted by the power of chaos, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience for most of the ordinary mortals living in the mortal realms after Sigmar shut the gates of Aesir. Now we're on to our painting guide. First up we have some techniques for base coating specifically. So all the painting we've been doing so far is base coating, using usually base paints to apply down a base colour to an area, which will be built over later. It introduces here the base coating keyword, which it says whenever you see this in future painting guides you can refer back to this to know what to do. So you do have to thin base paints generally, because they tend to be quite thick, although it does mention for metallic paints you need less water than you would for a non-metallic. And then just some tips for how to paint large areas and small areas and tricky details, how to load up your brush with paint, which you've all seen before, and also some guidance on moving the brush in a certain direction so you don't accidentally get paint on something you've already painted, using multiple thin coats rather than one thick one, and make sure you wash your brush frequently. There's a lot of pigment in base paints, so it can clog up the brush. And some other tips, like starting from the bottom layers outwards, which are the harder to reach areas, it's just easier to not make mistakes. Painting dark colours first, because it's easier to tidy up a mistake on a dark colour than it is on a light one, because it's hard to paint over. And now how to use our new paints. So first up we have an introduction to shading, using our Agrax Earthshade shade paint. So this is a particular type of paint that's not got much pigment, it's quite thin, but it also flows into all the recesses, so by applying it to an area with lots of texture you get a really nice effect where it brings out the detail and adds depth. So you're loading up your brush with the shade paint, don't get too much on. If it's dripping you need to wipe some off. But first we're adding some Abaddon Black to our Stormcast, so this is just for their sort of undersuits of their armour and a few other areas like leather. And then applying our Agrax Earthshade as a shade for the red bits, like the plumes, and also the sort of beige areas that have been painted, like parchment. There they are up to this point, so you can probably see that the Agrax Earthshade adds a nice depth to the colours that you've applied it to. And then the Kruleboyz, Abaddon Black, basically only on the shaman and the pot grot for the bowl the shaman's holding, and the cauldron and some other bits and pieces. And then shading basically all of the red areas with Agrax Earthshade, because it's a natural shade for a red colour. And that's what they look like up to this point. And we have another fold out in this issue, continuing our look at the Grand Alliances, in this case the armies of destruction. As general principles, it tends to be a culture of might makes right, so the strongest and largest of the creatures will lead, and nobody really thinks that there should be any other way of doing this. They stampede across the mortal realms, often going vast distances to smash things up, and generally with no greater goal in mind than destroying civilization and having a good time. And on the other side is just a gallery of models. So there's a large, big picture of the Sons of Bahamut, some Gargants and Mega Gargants, and some smaller boxes with Beastclaw Raiders, the Bone Splitter Aurochs, and some Spiderfang Grots. But that's it for the content of this issue, so I'll hand you over to Mike now, and we'll be learning some new rules and getting into our game.
So as usual in this issue we have some new rules. We're learning about battle traits today. These are sort of army-wide abilities that add additional flavour and capability to each faction. So it shows the three sort of sub-factions of the two grand alliances we have. We've got the Stormcast, the Sylvaneth and the Caradons for the Forces of Order, and the Kruleboyz, the Goonstrike, and the Ironjaws for the Forces of Destruction. So we've actually seen one of the Kruleboyz battle traits, that's Venom Encrusted Weapons, but we're learning a couple more here. They give you various different rules. Some of them change the way you deploy your army or give them extra abilities to use in battle and so on. So first up we have Signs of the Storm. This is one of the Stormcast Eternals battle traits, and it essentially represents their ability to teleport in from Azir in a burst of lightning. So effectively when you're using Signs of the Storm you can set up a number of your units in reserve, so they're not on the board at the start of the game, and then at the end of any of your movement phases you can have these units arrive. And to actually do that, you set up each unit as if you were deploying it, but you can deploy it anywhere on the battlefield as long as it's more than 9 inches from any enemies, and then any units that are not deployed by the end of the battle count as destroyed as well. And we also have dirty tricks, so these represent the Kruleboyz' various methods and cunning schemes to get the upper hand on the enemy. We have 2 of them here. So to use your dirty tricks after you've rolled off to see who takes the first turn, but before either players had their hero phase, you can pick one of the dirty tricks to use in battle. So we have Noisy Racket, which means enemy models subtract 1 from wound rolls in the first battle round, or alternatively you can use Covered in Mud, in which case you roll 3 dice, and for each roll of 4+, you can pick one friendly unit that is not a hero or monster, and then while that unit is in cover it is not visible to enemy units. So essentially what that means is it can't be targeted by spells or ranged attacks, but it does mean they can still be charged though, and they do have to remain in cover as well. So we have the war score here for the Lord Imperator. He's pretty much the same as we've seen before, but he has got 2 new rules. Distinguished Leader there involves command points. We don't know about them, so we'll go over that when we're introduced to them. More useful in this game is Guided by Lightning. So this is a little bit of a complicated wording, but what this is once per turn at the end of your movement phase, as long as the Lord Imperator is on the battlefield, you can say he's going to guide Sigmar's warriors, in which case you can pick one friendly Stormcast Eternals Thunderstrike unit with a wounds characteristic of 3 or less that is in reserve, and then when you use Signs of the Storm with that unit it can show up anywhere more than 7 inches away from any enemy units, as opposed to more than 9 inches away. And here we have an example of Guided by Lightning being used here, allowing those Vindictors to arrive just over 7 inches away from those Kruleboyz. So we can get into today's game. Lightning strikes twice, where the Lord Imperator is apparently out for a stroll and has discovered a fortified Kruleboyz position, and obviously he's going to try and summon reinforcements to shift them from this location. So we have the Lord Imperator and Gryph-hound, and 5 Vindictors and 4 Praetors going up against the Swampcaller Shaman and Potgrot, 10 Hobgrot Slitters, 10 Gut Rippers and 3 Manticore Boltboys. And we'll be making use of our new battle traits. And you can see the deployment map there. We have only the Lord Imperator on the board for the Stormcast and the start, in the second from the left column, and then the Kruleboyz are on more of the right hand side of the board, and we are using the terrain, but it's sort of scattered at the top and bottom of the board. And it notes here about using Signs of the Storm, so the Stormcast start with the Vindictors and the Praetors in reserve already, and it does note that you should deploy them you should deploy them at the end of your first movement phase as described with Signs of the Storm. I do know that it is at the end of the movement phase, so that doesn't mean that the unit that arrives can move. They can still act normally in further phases. And then the game lasts 5 battle rounds, and whoever slays, if you slay all the enemy models, you win, otherwise it's a draw. And a little preview of the victory outcomes. For the turn sequence is pretty much the same. Just remember that the Kruleboyz get to pick a dirty trick at the start of the first battle round, and the Stormcast get to go first. So here we are set up. We have Lord Imperator Helo Hammerfist and his companion Dauntless, currently heavily outnumbered by the Kruleboyz, but obviously he's going to remedy that soon enough. And I'm going to pick for my dirty trick to be Noisy Racket, because Stormcast don't have that many ranged attacks in this game, and there's not an awful lot of cover either, so being covered in mud is not going to be that useful. And now we can head straight into Stormcast turn 1.
So in the normal course of my movement phase, Helo Hammerfist is going to move towards the Manticore Boltboys, and then I get to bring in some units at the end of the movement phase using Signs of the Storm. So I'm going to use Guided by Lightning on the Praetors, who are obviously using their bodyguard ability on the Lord Imperator, incidentally, because he's the only hero around to protect. And so I've deployed them, and they're more than 7 inches away from all of the Kruleboyz units. So they're about 7 inches away, just outside of the Boltboys, and they're also just over 7 inches away from the Hobgrots. And then I've brought in the Vindictors as well, but without Guided by Lightning, they have to be more than 9 inches away from every Kruleboyz model. So you can see we just use these range rulers. The Lord Imperator is going to use his Stormcaller baton on the Gut Rippers. See if we can take 1 or 2 out and start making them take battle shot tests. So it's D6 shots, 5, hitting on all 3s, getting 4, And wounding on 4s would be 3s, but Dirty Tricks, Noisy Racket makes it -1 to wound. So they did make a difference, we only got 1 wound.
6+ armor save. No, Gut Ripper takes a wound. Well, we're in the charge phase. That means the Gut Rippers get to use their scare tactics. I can't target the Lord Imperator because he's a hero, so the Praetor's the only unit in range. So I've still got all 10 Gut Rippers, so I get to add 2 to this roll. I got a 7. Praetor's a Bravery 8, so it does not work on them.
And then we'll declare some charges. I think all 3 units will at least attempt to charge. We'll do the Lord Imperator first because he's in the way, so he rolls an 8, so he will be in. I'll move him first. Praetor's next because they're in the way of the Vindictors, so they need a 7 minimum to get to anything because they have to start more than 7 inches away. So a roll of 7 will be enough to get them within half an inch. They roll a 9. So the Lord Imperator got round the back of the Bolt Boys and the Praetors have followed him in because they can't bodyguard him unless they're near him. Probably massive overkill on that unit, but never mind. And then the Vindictors will also attempt to charge. They're probably going to have to go for the Hobgrots if anything, because there's not any room over there anymore. They had to deploy more than 9 away, so they need a 9 to get within half an inch of the Hobgrots. Oh, they get an 11. Oh, we're doing well for charges at least. Yeah, so they make a charge all the way over there. They weren't quite in range of the Gut Rippers, so they do have to go after the Hobgrots, but that's okay. I think we'll do the Vindictors first, because the Bolt Boys they only have a few attacks. Just piling in slightly, we can get them all in range because of 2-inch weapon range. And 11 attacks, hitting on 3s, 6s do a mortal wound instead. Well, we've got 4 mortal wounds, and 4 more hits that win on 4s because of Noisy Racket. Only 1 more.
Hey, it made a difference. So that's 5 dead Hobgrots. Well, Hobgrots are safe now, so I guess I'll pick the Bolt Boys to go. So I piled in that one at the back into the Lord Imperatant. He'll have to fight him. The other 2 will fight the Praetors, but it's basically just there to try and stop the Praetors all from getting in. So 4 attacks with their jaggedy blades, I think they have, on the Praetors, looking for 4s, 6 do mortal wounds instead. We got a hit. Wounds on 4, it does not. And the Lord Imperatant gets 1 hit. That doesn't wound.
So I'll just do the Lord Imperatant. Yeah, he can't pile in to let the Praetors in, but hopefully that won't be necessary, but we'll see. Well, he hit 3 times, winning on 4s. Again, it didn't make any difference, but he's only got 1 wound.
It's -1 rend, so a Bolt Ball will die.
And Dauntless gets 4 attacks, hit twice. Wounds on 5s because of Noisy Racket. Oh, 2 wounds.
Never mind then. 6+ armour. No, another Bolt Boy dies. I'll just leave the boss left. Yeah, then I've just got the Hobgrots left. So 11 attacks from the Hobgrots, hitting on 4s, and 6s are 2 hits. 5 hits, wounding on 5s. 1.
3+ save. Yeah, we're fine. We've only actually got 1 Praetor who can strike because I can't physically move any others within the 1-inch weapon range. But it's the Prime, so she does have 4 attacks, which hit on 3s, so that's 3. And winning on 4s because of Noisy Racket. Oh, 2 wounds.
Yeah, he's dead. Well, and finally, the Hobgrots have to take a Battleshock test at the end of the turn. Bravery 4, and they lost 5, so... Well, 3, that's 7. 3 more run away, I think I'll take that. So it's just Rack and the Banner Bearer left. And that's it for the Stormcast turn, a pretty devastating opening. We're on to Kruleboyz turn 1, where we'll start in the hero phase with the Swampcaller Shaman, who's going to try and cast Arcane Bolt. He needs a 5, he fails with a 4. Movement phase, the Swampcaller Shaman and the Gut Rippers are going to move towards the Vindictors. And you know what, I think I will move the 2 remaining Hobgrots out of melee, so they live a little bit longer. I forgot to mention it in the hero phase, but Golmrog the Great, the Shaman, is going to give a poison to the Gut Rippers, so we're on to the charge phase. I'll do the Gut Rippers first. Now the Gut Rippers have their scare shields first, so I'll use it on the Vindictors. I get a 4, which becomes a 6, that's not quite enough because they're Bravery 8. And then the Gut Rippers charge is more than a 3, so they're in, and the Shaman is in as well. So that gets both units into range of the Vindictors, and I'll pick the Gut Rippers to go first. So we've got 21 attacks from the Gut Rippers, and they are hitting on 4s, and 5 pluses do mortal wounds instead, thanks to that poison. Well, we got 5 mortal wounds, and then 2 regular hits that wound on 4s, getting another one. So that's 5 mortal wounds, and then a 3+ save.
Well, which I did fail, so it's basically 6 damage will kill 3 of them. So leaving just the Banner and the Prime, who will fight back against the Gut Rippers. 5 attacks on 3s, 6s do mortal wounds, so there's a mortal wound. And 3 hits that win on 4s, because we're still in the first turn. 2 wounds.
So 6s. Oh, made 1. So that's 2 damage. Lose a Gut Ripper and the 1/6. Now, Golmrog and Stugit will pile in. Do Golmrog first. He has 2 attacks hitting on 3s, 6s do mortal wounds instead. He got a hit. That wounds on a 3. He did not. And Stugit gets a mortal wound. Stugit wounds the batter man with a poisoned ladle or something, I don't know. And that's the end of the combat phase, where those Vindictors do have to make a Battle test. And so do the Gut Rippers. So we lost 1, and we're Bravery 5, so we're okay.
Whereas the Vindictors lost 3 and we're Bravery 8 with the banner. So that
job.
Makes 8 in total, so we're fine.
Yeah, good job you got the banner. And that's it for the first battle round. On to battle round 2.
So in my movement phase, the Praetors and the Lord Imperator have just moved to be 3 inches away from the Gut Rippers. I'm not going to move the Vindictors, partly because they're going to struggle to actually get away because they're kind of surrounded, but also because if they retreat, then the Gut Rippers could use their scare tactics again, because they can't do that while they're engaged in melee. But in the shooting phase, we'll throw some lightning bolts at the Gut Rippers again. D6, that's 4, hitting on 3s. Oh, I only managed 1. Wounded on 3 now, because we're out of turn 1. It does.
Yeah, it's not so noisy. 6+ armour. Nope. Wounded man dies.
And charge rolls. No, we just don't. Anything more than a 2. So this is the Lord Imperator, he's in, and the Praetors are just about in. So we'll go like so, and then I will pick the Praetors to fight first. So 13 attacks, hitting on 3s. 10 hits, wounding on 3s. And that's 7 wounds.
7, 6+ save. We made 1. There's only 6 dead Gut Rippers. So we've got 2 Gut Rippers next, but I'm actually going to pick the Shaman to go next, just to make sure he's safe from those Vindictors. He's got 2 attacks with his staff on 3s, getting 1 again, and a 3. And he wounded this time. And it's -1.
4+. Made it.
And Stugit gets 2 mortal wounds. And possibly for the first time, one of the companion grots has killed a model.
Well, that leaves just the Vindictor Prime left. I'm going to do the Lord Imperator and see if we can kill those 2 Gut Rippers before they can strike anything. 4 attacks on 3s. Well, he gets 3 hits. And wounding on 3s. It's 3 wounds.
3 6s? No, they're all gone. So just the Vindictor Prime left. See if she can take out that very deadly grot.
3s, 6s do mortal wounds, or 2 mortal wounds, and nothing else.
Stu gets down to 4. But that's it. Technically, the Vindictor Prime has to make a Battle test because she can't fail it. And we'll be on to Kruleboyz turn 2. Well, Stugit's pet Shaman gets a chance to cast a spell, needing a 5. Oh, well, I was going to say he's going to cast Arcane Bolt. But yes, he cast Arcane Bolt.
Yep, I can't unbind it.
You know what, we'll see if we can zap a Praetor. So D3 mortal wounds. Oh, 3.
No, kills one.
The Hogwarts don't really have anywhere good to move, so I think we're just going to hide behind that crystal. And then they'll try and throw some grenades at the Vindictor Prime. 2 shots on 4s, getting a hit, and a 3. Wounds, saving -1. So 4+.
Yeah, Ren -1, 4+. She dies.
And I think the battle is largely decided at this point, but Stugit's going to bravely charge, see how many Praetors he can take down with him. Right. Ooh, their charge is just successful. So they'll charge into the Praetors like that. So Golmrog gets to strike first with his staff. He insists on it apparently. Needs 3s to hit. He still only gets 1. Does he wound? Yes.
4+. Nope.
Ooh, D3 damage. 1. And Stugit gets a hit. And that doesn't wound.
And then the Praetors will pile in, trying to avenge the one who got blown to bits. 10 attacks on 3s. Not very good. Only 5 hits on 3s. Only 2.
Oh. 6+ armour. They live! Well, Stugit and the other one are obviously trying to prolong the game. On to Stormcast turn 3.
Right, we'll try and finish this off. So the Lord Imperator is going to go between the 2 units, and the Praetors will stay engaged in the shooting phase, or use his Stormcaller baton on the 2 Hobgrots. D6 shots, 2. All 3s, so they both hit. And 3s, well they both wound.
We got cover, 6+ armour. No.
Oh. And then he'll just declare a charge. He's in. He'll go there, but we'll see if we can give the Praetors the honour of finishing off the job, because they have more attacks. 3s, well...
I think they don't have stall stars.
6 hits is better than last time. 3s again? Oh, that's better. 6 wounds.
Yeah.
6 6s to live.
Yeah, just need to make all these 6s. Well, we made 2. That's more than average. But yeah, that'll take down Stugit. So there we have all the Kruleboyz wiped out. That'll be a Stormcast victory. We'll recap that game for you now. Well, that was the game for issue 17 of Age of Sigmar Stormbringer magazine. How do you think that went?
Well, pretty well, but I got all my charges off in the first turn. That was a fairly decisive factor in the game, really. Because normally, with Signs of the Storm or similar abilities, there are plenty of similar ones in Age of Sigmar. Normally, yes, you are limited to deploying more than 9 inches away, is usually the default. And rolling a 9 on 2d6 is about a 27% chance or something like that. So you have a chance of getting into combat, but you have to roll well. I made my 7-inch charge, which is not that unlikely, but then I also made the 9-inch charge.
Yeah, and then at that point, to be fair, the Hoggrots, what do you worry about? The Manticore Boltboys can do a lot of damage in the right situations. Yeah, it just sort of showed how deadly that sort of abilities like that are. And also, it's not so apparent on a board this small, but it's actually really helpful for fairly slow units, because the Stormcast are fairly slow when they're foot slogging, to be able to just arrive near where they need to be.
Yeah, and normally that's a thing that, well, you could put any Stormcast unit in reserve to do that.
I mean, you can even put something like the Chariot in reserve and then have it, even with if it makes its 9-inch charge, do a bunch of mortal wounds when it hits.
It's one of those things where it's a gamble. You get the possibility of deploying them anywhere, but you're more likely than not to fail any charge you attempt, and then your unit might actually just find itself out in the open or out of position, because the enemy could then just run away as well, which when you've got Stormcast who are relatively slow on foot, that can be an issue.
Yeah, it can also be useful if you've got units with ranged attacks that are fairly slow. You could just deploy them in range to shoot things, and it keeps them safe from fire in earlier turns as well.
Yeah, you could also do it with heroes who have various abilities that support the army. You could keep them away off the board to start with and deploy them where they're needed as the battle progresses. But obviously the Lord Imperitance ability is quite handy, because making a 7-inch charge is much more likely than a 9, better than 50%. So it gives you that more reliability, only for 1 unit per turn, but it's one of the 2 things he can do that's not just hitting people.
Yeah, and there are more dirty tricks for the Kruleboyz than the 2 we have. I know on paper I really like Covered in Mud. It's just unfortunately we don't get that much terrain at the moment, so actually having cover is a bit difficult. Otherwise it's actually really handy for specifically the Boltboyz, because it protects them from return fire. Otherwise Noisy Racket I think is probably more useful. But I guess it depends on deployment, because with Noisy Racket you're probably fairly far away from your opponent most of the time, so it's not that much use. It's only going to protect from range attacks.
It was useful in this game, ironically, because I made my charges, whereas if I'd failed all my charges, then, well, I suppose you would have charged me, perhaps, but against a slow army with little shooting, it's actually not that much use, that one.
Yeah, and it's just probably quite too difficult to get cover to maximise the use of Covered in Mud.
Yeah, whereas the keeping the Bolt Thrower and the Boltboyz safe from being shot by, Luxor Storm Rider from Xandar's Truth Seekers, or some other ranged units I will get, will be really useful, because they've got long range as well, so they can hide at the back.
Yeah, and there is also the fact that you might not Covered in Mud might not actually work as well. Yeah, hopefully we'll get, I think there are something like 4 or 6 dirty tricks to choose from, so hopefully we'll get the other ones as well. And hopefully I think there are some other battle traits, certainly for the Thunderstrike Stormcast, hopefully we'll get them as well.
Yeah, and of course Venom Encrusted Weapons is a battle trait, but we've just had it on their War Scrolls for now, but technically it is a battle trait. Normally the way it works is your whole army has to be of a certain faction to get that battle trait. We do get several factions with the Stormbringer collection, so we're not sure in the future how they do it. They might do it like Imperium Magazine for 40k, where actually they'll just say you get all your battle traits, because otherwise you couldn't make a full army anyway.
And we did get 2 new paints. Abaddon Black's not too exciting, but the Agrax Earthshade, being able to shade things, it's a really handy way to add lots of extra detail. I think sometimes those washes and things have been called talons in a bottle, that sort of thing. It just adds lots of extra depth to the model really quickly and adds a lot of detail. Obviously we'll see more of that in the future, but otherwise I don't think there's too much more to say about this game or this issue. So as always, if you like this content, do leave a like and subscribe. So you've been getting on with the collection. We're coming up to a quarter of the distance already. We've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.